What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Fierce Framework podcast, where we talk about becoming fierce through messy action, baby steps, and cultivating confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm a business coach with a passion to see women breaking out of the mold society tells us we're supposed to fit into and to start living life more on our own terms. I believe the world benefits when women are living lives that we're lit up about and we're pursuing a purpose that makes us feel fulfilled. My goal with this podcast is to share inspiration, stories of other entrepreneurs just like you, and practical tools and tips to help you become fierce in your business. If that sounds good to you, you're going to love this episode. Let's get down to it. Paula, I am so happy that you are here with me today. Just to introduce my audience a little bit, because I do a lot of solo episodes. So I met Paula through a podcasting group, and we were kind of like in a pod together. So we've been getting to know each other more and more over the last like year and a half. You have been just such a gem. I feel like we clicked. Like we're so different in some ways and so similar in other ways. And so I'm so excited to have you on the podcast to share your story. I know that people are going to get a ton out of what you have to share. So let's dive in. Like, let's get started. Tell us about yourself. What are some things that we should know as we're introducing you?
Wow. Let me just say too, I'm so glad to be here, Mary Beth. I friggin' love you. I fucking love your vibe, girl. Like I want to be like you, and say all the cool things that you say. So I'm so happy to be here. Um, let's see, to tell you a little bit about myself. I consider myself a leader and a teacher, and I'm very much a lover. I'm a Leo,
Mm.
so I just am operating from the heart most of the time. And that's where I get my courage from too, I think. And I'm a seeker. I've been a seeker for, my God, all my life. I'm spiritual. I'm a yogi. I am a mom. I just moved halfway across the country from Minnesota to Virginia, and I now live in Wise, Virginia, in the Appalachian Mountains, which is nowhere I didn't, somewhere I never thought I would be. Let's just say that. But we're loving it here, and it just feels right. And then, like what I do for work, I'm a sound healer. I'm a Reiki Master teacher. I I'm a life and business coach, and I also lead Sacred Sisterhood Circle groups, and I'm expanding that into a formal membership. I'm in
Mm.
the midst of doing that, and I'm super excited about that sort of next chapter. I'm also a priestess in training.
Okay, you're doing all the things. There's so much to dive into here. Tell us more about like what is a sacred sisterhood group and what does that look like?
So, a Sacred Sisterhood Circle for me, what I created is a place where you can come and just be yourself. You don't have to be impressive. You can just show up as you are, no matter how you are feeling or what's going on in your life, and you can be nourished. You can have sisters
Mm.
who will hold space for you and have soul nourishing conversations. And we meditate and we do some rituals and we have some ceremony plugged in there. We draw oracle cards. A few of the women in my inner circle, in my sisterhood group, are mediums and psychics, and so they help, everyone in the sisterhood
Mhm.
with those kinds of things and sort of what they see and what they're getting as we're each sort of just sharing. It's a place where we can just say what's on our hearts and minds without
Mm.
judgment, and just be held in such a beautiful way. Like it's
Mm.
just this beautiful thing. Um, yeah, so that's kind of some of what we do and kind of what goes on.
I love that. I think that's so powerful to like have that space. I don't think that I think that's uncommon.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think that's
And
really
one of
cool.
the things that we do is that we brag. In every monthly gathering, I go around and I have us brag about something, not to be boastful, but because what we do as women on a daily basis is fucking epic and it's fucking legendary. And we need to
Truly.
like sit in the seat of our power and
Come
own
on.
the freaking awesomeness that we are so that we are empowered by that. And so I love like doing that. I'm here to
Mhm.
uplift women and make us remember that we need to be part of a community and part of connection. We need to be connected with each other
Mhm.
and just help each other just for helping each other, not to get anything in return, not to have it be a transaction like so much is in the world today, but to just
Mhm.
show up for each other because we love each other.
I love that so much.
Me
That's
too.
amazing. How did you get to like what was your journey towards that? Like how did you discover that you were spiritual and that you wanted to bring people together and empower women and like all these things like Reiki, all these things you have your hand in? Like what did it can you tell us a little bit about your journey to like get to where you are now? Because I think as a brand new like entrepreneur, so many of us are like fresh out of corporate. And I feel like this is a whole new world. So I would love to hear more about how you got here.
Aw. Wow. Well, it's all, sort of happened over time. Like it's all developed over time. When I first, if I answer like, how did I get into the Sacred Sisterhood Circle? I mean, honestly, what was happening for me at the time, about a year ago when I started it, is that I was just craving community and connection with
Mhm.
women so badly. And I had been craving it for a long time, like
Mhm.
a couple years. Deeper connections, not the surface level friends that I had had in the past and all this. I wanted deep, deep connections. And so I thought, well, this is what I want to sort of do when I pull them together. And I just like put one agenda together and I put out an email to a bunch of girlfriends that I would want in that first sort of inner circle, sacred sisterhood.
Mhm. Mhm.
And a few of them raised their hand, and so I started the meetings, and that's how that particular thing began. It was just a craving within myself.
So you built the group you were looking for.
Yeah,
Okay. Sometimes
yeah,
you got to do it yourself.
yeah. And thank you for reflecting that back to me because I needed to hear that for other things that I'm working on. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And like how I got into spirituality and Reiki and all those things, like one thing just kind of happened after another, and like it all started with Reiki for me, and
Mhm.
that was in October of 2020. I went on a retreat, a 7-day retreat to a place on a beach in Mexico, a beautiful, beautiful place that's very spiritual. It's like it's one of the energy vortexes. And a girlfriend of mine had been to this place before and gotten her yoga teacher training certificate. It's called Yandara Yoga Institute. And she's just told me how magical and beautiful this place is and wanted me to come and experience it with her. And so invited me to
Mhm.
go. She's like, do you want to go, learn Reiki for a week at Yandara on a beach in Mexico? And I was like, fuck yeah, sign me up, and I didn't know anything about Reiki. I knew nothing. All I knew was it was energy work.
Okay.
And I didn't even know what I believed about energy or what I thought about energy.
Yeah.
And I was in my corporate career at the time, long-standing 26-year career in big financial institutions. And so I went on this retreat and I had a big bang awakening, like huge.
Mhm.
Like my whole life changed in that 7 days. I came back a different person, completely different person. So much so that my wife was afraid that I was going to leave her, and my daughter was like up in my face saying, "Who the
Oh,
fuck are you? Like, I don't even know who you are." I said, "We're
wow.
finding out." Like, I didn't eat the same, I didn't dress the same, I didn't talk the same, I didn't care about the same things. I didn't like, I couldn't even eat the same food.
Transformation.
Yeah, 100%. And I really, what happened was so much healing, first of all, happened. Just
Mhm.
the potency and the power of the healing that happened was just like a freaking miracle, really.
Mhm.
And I woke up to the fact that I was living my life for everybody else instead of myself. And so that's when like the light bulb went off for me, and I came home and I started making changes. I had already sort of been on a little bit of a healing path. Like I had
Mhm.
gotten into yoga, which got me out of my head and into my body.
Mhm.
That was just healing in and of itself.
Mhm.
And so that's like my whole entrance into spirituality was Reiki. So I came home, I opened my business right away because I'm like, this had such a powerful impact in my life. How could I not
Mhm.
share it with others? So
Yeah.
I was trying to have it as a side hustle, and of course, was so drained by my corporate job every day that I barely had enough time to put into my little fledgling
What's
side.
that like?
And then I went back to Yandara. I knew
Okay.
that they had a coaching program coming up, like it was 6 months after my Reiki training. And so I went back, and that life coaching training was another huge transformation in my life. Like my
Mm,
teacher was just the most beautiful example of peace and grace from the inside out. And I was just like, I want to be you, you know?
wow.
And like she just opened my eyes to so many things, and that whole training did, and the whole experience. And I had another more awakening, you know, more healing, more awareness of, you know, what my life was really, and really where I wanted it to go.
Mhm.
And so I incorporated coaching. You know, I really started getting serious about my meditation practice, and that was really life changing for me too. And I started going inward because you know, I quit my corporate job finally, and you know, stepped away from that and went all in on my business, and you know, since have you know, added sound healing and the other things, podcasting. Although my podcast is on hold right now,
Okay.
but it was just sort of one, sort of just being led to one thing as I felt an interest. Like really, it was really my heart's desires. I got
Mm,
connected with myself as I got still in meditation,
mm,
and I realized I didn't know myself, and that was fucking scary. Like I didn't know who
yeah.
the fuck I was, or why I was here, or what I even liked. I didn't even know what I liked. Like, how am I supposed to know what I'm supposed to go pursue when I don't even know what the fuck I want or what I like? So I just started with getting quiet and getting still and sitting with myself and asking the questions, and sometimes they wouldn't
Mhm.
come. Like, what is my heart's desire? Like that took a while to like bubble up.
Yeah.
And then like once I got kind of reconnected with myself, and I was really discovering myself again, and I was connected to my inner wisdom and my intuition, and I started
Mm,
following the breadcrumbs, and then it's
mm.
just been that. It's just been that.
That is so amazing. What helped you realize that like you don't even know yourself and you don't know what you like? Because I think so many of us like kind of go through life and we don't realize how out of touch we are with ourselves until something like triggers that.
When I started to ask myself, like, what do I want? Like, what is Reiki really what I want to pursue? You know, if when I'm
Yeah.
jumping off the corporate cliff, right, and leaving that, because that was huge for me.
Yeah.
I, you know, was the main breadwinner, and my salary supported the house that we lived in, all the things. Um, I just kept sitting in stillness and asking. I knew it had to come. So it was
Mhm.
just the trusting, right? Like trusting that the answers would come. Am I answering your question?
Yes, I love it. I love it.
um, and and just kept asking and asking, and then listening. That's one of the biggest things, listening,
Okay.
not just with the ears, but in all the ways. So when I felt a little spark in my heart as I would come across something on Instagram, I
Okay.
would listen to that, you know. I would like, oh, I just felt something in my heart. What is this? You know, or something that someone would say, a friend or even an
Mhm.
acquaintance, the way they would say it, it would resonate with me different. It was a clue. It was an
Mm.
email that would cross my inbox that I was filed away. And then I said, wait a minute. I'm telling myself I want to say yes to things, and I want to discover new things about myself. And I just filed that away. Wait, I'm going to bring that back into my inbox and reread that and call that person. It's and being scared as fuck and doing it anyway, which is the name of my podcast. And that's, I just kept going.
I love it. I love those examples. I feel like there's so that's you just shared like so many practical ways to learn how to like start paying attention to yourself and the things that are kind of calling you.
Yeah.
Um, you had mentioned like an Instagram post like catching your attention and listening to that. Can you talk a little bit more about like how you listen? Like what does that look like to start paying attention and to pursue those things?
I try to use all of my clair senses, if you're familiar with the clair senses,
Nope.
or and some of them aren't really like that strong with me, like the taste and smell, like the
Oh, yeah.
olfactory stuff, like that's not very strong with me. I'm more clairsentient, so I'm a feeler. So like so I started really paying attention because I didn't pay attention to my body for fucking 35 years because it was screaming at me the whole time I was in corporate,
Right.
telling
I
me
think
I'm
it's a
not in the
coping
right place.
mechanism. Yeah, like you can't and survive in corporate so often. So you
So
have to
I
like
just,
shut it down.
yeah, shoved that down for 30 some years, and so I started listening to how I feel, and part of that
Mm.
was that Reiki reawakened that within me,
Okay, yeah.
that feeling sense, because I started to real because Reiki's a very intuitive practice. And so
Hmm.
um when you're giving someone Reiki, like I started paying attention to what was happening in my body, because then that's a clue to what they need. And really, because Reiki is flowing, I'm channeling it, giving it to them. And so there's this connection of the higher selves and of that's happening during that kind of a practice. But
Mm.
so I started listening to my body, and um, when things were like a hell no or a fuck yes,
Mhm.
and then I was sort of kind of doing what I was saying earlier, like an email would cross my inbox literally, and I filed it away because I'm like, that's not for me. And then I pulled that back out, and then that led me to podcasting ultimately. There were a few
Mm.
breadcrumbs in between, and that led me to podcasting.
Okay.
So it's trying to pay attention to everything. And I know that can actually start to seem overwhelming. So that doesn't seem like the best advice to give. But um, I would listen to when someone said something and I felt like I heard it differently or it resonated differently. I would hold on to that. I would anchor it within my body. I
Mm.
would feed it to myself as medicine, or something to follow. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. I love it.
And yeah, it just trying to listen in all the ways. And so as I got quiet in meditation, I would also get downloads.
Mm.
And right before we got on today, you talked about a shower message that you had gotten, or a shower something you called
Shower
it.
thought.
Shower thought. Well, that is a download. That is your intuition.
Yes.
Shower thoughts are intuition. And so like, making sure I remembered those things and wrote them down and took action on them. And yeah,
Yes, because I did not write mine down and now it's gone forever.
it'll
But
come back.
I love that you highlighted that because I think it's so easily missed that we tend to get these like intuitive like downloads when we're not trying so hard. And I think that that's like why we get these ideas like in the shower, on the toilet, like when we're trying to fall asleep, is because you finally like let down your guard and you're kind of open to new ideas and things that you would normally shut down. Like, I don't have time for that. That's not for me. I'm not good enough for that. Like, and then they kind of, that guard is kind of lowered. And that seems to be like when I get my best ideas. And I've seen that with other people too, in like books I've read and podcasts. Like it seems to be common.
Yeah. And so
So
like,
fun.
shout out to everybody, remember your shower thoughts. 'Cause
Write it down. This is why millennials take our phones with us everywhere, in case we have a good idea.
yeah. And there's a thing about water. Like I'm not the
Mm,
best person to sort of speak to that, but there's a whole movement right now happening with water. Like water is conscious, it has memory, it holds memory, um it changes, it forms, like it's in us, right? It's all over in our earth, it's in us. And that's why things happen in the shower, because we're in water.
amazing.
Yeah.
I love that actually, because like I love the ocean. So I hear what you're saying. I also love the example you said about your email, because I think that like illustrates such a common situation where whatever it was that was prompting you to like file it away or disregard it and I know I'm kind of like projecting here, but what I'm hearing is like it almost seems like that was kind of like routine or what you expected for yourself or like standard behavior, and then something triggered it, like gave you an extra moment to where you were like, it doesn't have to be this way. Like I don't have to keep doing things this way. And then taking that time to like grab that email back and be like, wait. And I think that's so powerful. And that's why I wanted to highlight it because it's like it's just an email, but it's not. And I think that awareness and being able to go, wait, I'm gonna change this routine right now and do something different. I think that's so cool.
You want to know what's even cooler is I think it was
Yes.
a shower thought that
Stop it.
made me think, go back and get that fucking email out.
So
Because
this
it's
wasn't
not,
like the second after. This was like later on.
this was days later.
In my
Days.
mind, it was like, skirt, no, okay.
No, I got to tell the
Wow.
story. So,
Talk to me.
so
Because this is how we met, right? So this is
yeah.
important.
So I had in February of 2023, I took a coaching class for myself, not to get trained on how to coach better or to enhance my skills, but to rewire myself, to change
Okay.
my beliefs, to change me. And it
Coaches
was
need
pretty,
coaches.
yep, it was an intensive program. So I was all in, doing all the things. And there was the name of the program was called Abundant Ever After. It's by Kathy Heller. I totally loved it. Changed my life. And you know, there was each week there was things, you know, like things,
Mm-hmm.
lessons, all the things. And one week was on podcasting,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the only week that I took a bye week. I'm like, oof, podcasting isn't for me. That's never happening. I'm taking a break in this 12-week coaching program that I'm putting like 100,000% into. I'm going to take a break on the podcasting week. And so during this 12-week program, this email had crossed my desk, and it was from the executive producer of a radio show, a radio network who wanted me to, who had come across my website, my story, and
Wow.
wanted to know if I was interested in starting a radio talk show.
So
So I
fun.
filed that shit away. Like, talking over the airways, not my thing, not for me, right? I've always been scared to speak in front of groups, like all these things, right? Even as a leader in a big financial institution, I was always nervous to speak in front of groups, except for my own team.
That
Anyway,
blows my mind because you were so good at it.
thank you, thanks. Well, I've come a ways from there, but so yeah, I filed this email away. Several days later, I'm in the shower. I think, you know, I'm in this program that's trying to get me more in tune with my intuition and following the
Mm-hmm.
breadcrumbs and all the
Mm-hmm.
things and to saying yes to things because I want to change my life. And I
Mm-hmm.
said no to that email. So I went back to my desk that day. I pulled it out and I called that woman. And I set up a meeting with her and I met with her and she talked to me all about, she's like, so this was in the spring of 2023. She's like, I want you to start recording shows over the summer so that we can prepare for a fall launch of your radio talk show. And I'm like, hold up. I'm going to Costa Rica for 2 months this summer because that's when I was able to watch my friend's house and dogs. And so anyway, I'm like, I'm going to Costa Rica.
That's
I can't be
amazing.
making a talk show over
Yeah,
the summer.
yeah.
My summer's booked.
My summer is booked.
And she's like, well, my guess is that you're going to probably run into some really interesting people in Costa Rica. Why don't you buy a microphone and take it with you? And I'm like, well, I'll think about it.
Yeah.
So I thought about it, and a couple weeks later, I ordered a microphone and put that thing in my suitcase and brought that thing with me to Costa
Come
Rica.
on now.
And I met some really cool people. And so I turned the microphone on a couple of times while I was there and I recorded a couple of conversations. And as I was working,
Amazing.
like when I recorded these conversations, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be a podcast or a talk show. I don't even know what the name of it is or what it's going to be about, but I like hearing about people's stories. So that's where we're going to
Mm-hmm.
start.
Mm.
And I just recorded a couple. And by the time I got home from Costa Rica, I was pretty well thinking it was going to be a podcast. And Kathy Heller, the coach that I loved, who I took her program and I love her so much, she was having a 5-day free boot camp for podcasting for her
Yes, she
podcast
was.
as a lead into her podcasting program. And so this is like at the end of the year, August, September, something like this. And so I do the 5 day free boot camp thinking I've spent so much money on myself and Costa Rica and shit this year. Like I can't spend another dime.
Hmm.
And but so I'm going to do the free 5 day boot camp. So I do that, taking notes like crazy,
Hmm.
learning all the things. And then in the whole boot camp, she's like talked about scholarships like on the last day. And I'm like, scholarships? Well, I'll apply for a scholarship. And if I get one, then it's a breadcrumb from the universe that I'm supposed to keep going on this path.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
so I got a partial scholarship. It
Of course
wasn't
you did.
full, but it was partial. And
It
so
was enough.
dove in, took the class, met your beautiful ass, and started my podcast on 1/11/24.
Come the fuck on. I love
Yeah.
that. There's just so many cool things about that. I love how you mentioned like when you're in Costa Rica and you're having these conversations, like you didn't have a name for it, you didn't know what it was going to be even, but you did it because I love to harp on that. I'm like, take the action. And Kathy Heller says the same thing. Action leads to clarity. And so I love that you just like sprinkled that in there. You're like, I was doing the thing without having everything figured out first, and then that helped you gain clarity and led you like to the podcast. I think that's so cool.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for saying that in the way that you did, because I can say, what I did, but I don't look at it from that perspective that you just gave. And so that
Mm.
helps me, like in my telling of my story, how I can do that differently in the future. So thank you.
I'm just here connecting dots. That's how my brain works. I'm glad you appreciate it. So, one of the things I've been loving talking about recently is pivoting. So, I love to talk about how you don't have to have everything figured out first, messy action, and then pivoting. Like, in for the longest time, I thought I had to have everything figured out before I got started. And I think your story shows like so beautifully how like that's not true. Like you went to the yoga retreat because you were interested in kind of healing and learning more, and your friend invited you, right? Which is huge. And then I'm hoping I'm remembering correctly. And then the Reiki, like getting more into it. And then you had mentioned briefly like you added sound baths on. So when you're telling this story, in hindsight, it all makes so much sense, right? I'm like, oh yeah, like it just seems so logical and like flowing perfectly. And like as the listener, I'm like, yeah, wow, it just like seems like such an easy, logical path. And I'm sure in the moment it didn't feel that way at all.
Not at
And
all.
one of the things that stuck out is you were talking about podcasting. Like, yeah, then I started podcasting and now that's on hold. And that like stuck out to me. I was like, I feel like this is a good point where we can like dissect and dig more into that. Do you want to share more about where you're at with podcasting right now?
Sure. Um, I've actually been, sort of feeling a little bit of a call back to it. But
Okay.
so I had been going pretty strong with my podcast,
You have?
but we were literally moving across the country, so I had to put it on hold. I did go through periods like when I first launched the podcast, like it was so fucking amazing. Like it was so expansive. It was like the best thing ever in my life that I had ever done. And, I just felt like so proud of myself because it was such a big move for
Yeah.
me. And then I went through this period where it got really just rote, like or not the talking to people, but all of the other things, right?
It's
Like
real. It's real.
there's a lot of shit that goes on behind the scenes. At least
True
it did for
fact.
me. And it took me a long time to
Mhm.
get things done. And so it became instead of rote, I want to say it started to become kind of a burden, and it wasn't the happy thing that it had started out to be. So I went through
Mhm.
that period where I was kind of getting burned out. And but I kept going on, and then I kind of got this sort of renewed sense of excitement about it. And then we were moving and I had to put it on hold.
Right.
So, and as we were moving, and I was taking a break basically from all parts of my business because it was such a huge move. My kids weren't moving with us. I mean, they're older teenagers, but still.
Still.
And that was, it just added so much to it. Like it was such a big move. And so what that allowed me to do was take a step back and reflect on all of the things that I was doing. And I did feel like I was spread too thin, And I
Yeah.
was just asking myself, what do I really want to go forward with?
Mhm.
I've started all these things. It's a bit much. What do I really want to do when I land in Virginia and am ready to start my business back up? And so I kind of went into this period of cocoon, like I was just like in it. And you heard it on a week to week, Mary Beth. But like I
And
just,
I had been there not that far before you, so relatable.
yeah, I just went through this period of like, God, I was just inward, totally inward.
Mhm.
And I went through this whole like sort of transformation and metamorphosis and came out on the other side really not sure that I wanted to continue with the podcast. I put it on hold, fully intending to come back to it a couple months later, and then I still haven't. But I also like, I'm not the kind of person where I leave things undone. Like that
Mhm.
bothers me. So it's kind of been bothering me that I've left that out there. So at the very least, I will be putting something out to either just have more of a completion
Mhm.
or more of a permanent whole or longer term rest or whatever break.
Mhm.
But I think about I have episodes recorded that are just sitting there that I could put out, but there's work to do that. And so I don't know, I'm struggling with it right now. So I'm just letting it set there until I can find exactly what I want to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that so much because I think it's such a powerful lesson to see you resisted it for a while, right? And then it like had its season and you were really into it and like all the things and then the growing pains of like getting bored with it and it feeling like a burden and then kind of coming back to it. And part of why I wanted you to share that is because I think it's just such a beautiful example of how we can like bring things on for a season and then we can set it back down and like you don't have to do something forever and you
totally.
don't have to avoid doing something because you don't want to do it forever. Like you can
Totally.
try things and you can do things for a while and then you can stop doing them.
Yep.
It's
And
amazing.
and I did not believe that all my life. Like I was
Yeah,
raised,
me neither.
I was very limited in my thinking until just the last, 4 or 5 years here. So, um, I followed one path,
Mm.
my whole life, and
Mm.
then it was like, whoa. And now I'm like flowing and just letting things be what they are and trying all these things. And my wife tells me she feels like she's attached to a rocket sometimes because I'm kind of all over the place, with Reiki coaching,
I
sound,
mean,
sisterhood circle, podcasting.
you got to do all the things.
Yeah. And
But
so
like you also take the time to, like you were saying, you recognize when you were getting burnt out. You recognize when you were taking on too much and were able to like set something down. And I think that that is super powerful because if you keep too much on your plate and you stay overwhelmed, which I think a lot of us do, I did for a long time, then you don't have the capacity to try something new. And
right.
so if you're willing to set something down, then yeah, you have open hands to pick something else up. But if we insist on keeping everything all the time, then we just get burned out.
And unhappy and all those, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
super bitchy if you're anything like me.
I know, right?
Hey, so we're always talking about our dreams and making progress towards our goals on this podcast. But what if you don't know where to start, right? Maybe you're so full of amazing ideas that you have a hard time narrowing it down and picking something to start with. Or maybe after years of not having a say, you don't even know what you like or what you want anymore. Either way, I got you, okay? I created a free course that's just for you. It's a 5-day training on how to find your focus. It's super easy because all you gotta do is you sign up and I'm gonna deliver a lesson to your inbox every day. The course is all about helping you hone in on what lights you up so that you can focus on one thing at a time and start making progress towards your dream. It's super easy to sign up. You can go to thefierceframework.myflowdesk.com/focus. I know it's kind of long. Thefierceframework.myflowdesk, that's my FLO desk.com/focus. I've also got the link in the show notes, or you can always DM me at the Fierce Framework and I'll hook you up. You were talking about your metamorphosis and how you've come out of that, and kind of tying back into like all the things you were talking about when I asked you about yourself. So tell us more about like where you're at now and what like new things you're working on and what's exciting right now.
So right now, what's super exciting for me and present is that I'm going to school to become a professional priestess.
Tell us about Priestess School.
Oh my God. So do we have a couple minutes? And
We do have a couple minutes, and you told me you had notes, so we're
I do.
ready.
I do because I'm new at this, right? And I haven't started school yet. It starts in mid-January, so like in about a month.
And I love this
But
too because like I have no idea about this world, and so this is not something that people would hear about on my podcast. So I'm so excited for you to share with us.
right on. And thank you for letting me, because it will help me talk about it, and start to get used to talking about it.
That's so real.
Yeah, but I've been doing some pre-work, so that's how I have these notes. And so I'll let you know what I've learned so far. And I have to first give credit to Elaine Kalila, who is the Dean of the Priestess Presence Temple and School of Sacred Arts, and she's also the temple holder and keeper. And so that's the mystery school that I'm enrolled in for next year, and that's where all this information came directly from. So thank you, Elaine. So I want to talk, if it's okay, a little bit about history. So there's some context about priestess, and then go into like the modern day priestess.
Yeah, take us on a journey.
Right on. So historically, like this is just so fucking cool. The priestess was responsible for the spiritual health and well-being of her entire community.
Mm,
And this is the way that it was for all of time until just the last 2000 years when the church and patriarchy took over and purposely like erased sacred feminine and started really ruling over people.
mhm.
So prior to the last 2000 years, so for like millions of years, sacred women were the leaders and the teachers and of all communities across the globe.
Mm,
And I hate to say they were rulers because women didn't really rule over people. Like when there were more matriarchal societies, they were actually more egalitarian societies because men stood with us as
mhm,
equals.
mhm.
And we just stood by each other as equals. And men came to women for guidance, answers, and directions on everything. And so,
Because we're
and when
so
I say
wise.
that, huh?
Because we're so wise.
We are, and we are connected. That's
Mm,
we're connected and we're givers of life. So that's a big deal.
mm,
And I say that, that the sacred feminine was erased and it was a purposeful erasure. And there's proof of all of this. I'm not just like taking this out of a hat, but what they're finding is all of these ancient texts and that have all of this information and
mm.
all over different parts of the world who have the same priestesses, like the same sort of images of priestesses and what they looked like and how they
Okay.
referred to them back in ancient times. Like they're finding them
Mhm.
in different places all across the world.
Mm,
The same priestesses, the similar names and things were worshipped and goddesses and things like that. And they're finding all these ancient texts and they're finding ancient temples where things are carved on the walls. So
mhm.
anyway, we are in the process of reclaiming our exploration of what the priestess holds for us as a social, cultural, political, and spiritual function throughout our modern day society. And we're really
Mm,
just at the beginning of this. I mean, really at the very infant stages of it. I mean, I think the Priestess Presence Temple and School of Sacred Arts is probably the only priestess school out there, so it's the very beginnings. So first and foremost, like the modern day priestess stands as and for love
I love that.
and walks the path of love in the face of all things and all people, no matter what.
We need that so much right now.
Yes,
Wow.
so much. She's also a bridge between the deeply spiritual world and the pragmatic, practical world.
Mm,
And she travels between these worlds and integrates them for herself, and for those around her. The priestess archetype is richly steeped in the wisdom of our ancient mothers. So there's a strong aspect of nurturing
mhm.
in to being a priestess, I guess. Um, to be a priestess requires the capacity to walk through the world awake and ready. It requires presence, compassion, humility, and walking in our own hearts so that we can awaken others to do the same.
Mm.
We are trained as a priestess to hold the paradoxes of life and walk in all of it with ease and grace in our own system, stretching our capacity to forgive and stand in unconditional love. And really, like, we can tolerate being in the unknown and help navigate the darkness.
Mm.
And she chooses to walk toward and stand in the fire.
Ooh.
She's reverent and irreverent at the same time. She's an emissary of remembrance for all people to come back to their wholeness and humanity.
Mm.
She's an alchemist, metabolizing all the separation and divisiveness in the world through her own heart. She's wild, disciplined, unique, doesn't care what people think, can deal with doubt and confusion, and still stay sourced within the divine. She is the ability to walk on the edge, to be an edge walker. She's fierce and truthful, wields the sword of her integrity, speaks truth to power, is willing to get out of her own comfort zone and bring her full self to the moment. She's always working on behalf of the whole or the collective. She's grounded and expanded, practical and spiritual, divine and human, and is the conduit for love.
That's so beautiful. I love that so much.
Thank you. And one last part in ceremony, which is the track that I'm taking in priestess school, because like college or university, there are different tracks or majors to take. I'm
Okay,
going to
yeah.
become a certified ceremonialist. And so in a ceremony type of space, a priestess holds powerful energetic container for the women in the temple, whether that's a physical temple or an digital sort of online energetic temple, holding space for all that comes up for the women there, helping alchemize whatever needs transforming, holding the belief and the knowing of all that's possible, that we are so much more powerful than we know or have ever been taught, and that we have the ability to change. And ritual and ceremony helps facilitate that transformation for people faster and smoother, like, because we start to remember, like, as women, when we sit in ceremony together, we start to remember,
Mm.
because it's in us. It is deep within all women. It's there. And so there's a remembrance that happens
Like remembering the like generational, like that history.
of
Is that
when
where
we
you're
used to do it before, of
okay?
when we used to call on our intuition and rely on that for every single thing in our lives, when we used to
Mm.
be more connected to the earth and the cycles of the earth and nature and the cycles of the moon and the cosmos. Yeah, so
That's
much.
so powerful because it's like we know about generational trauma. So that like generational, like that history, that remembering, I think that's so powerful to like remember that there can be good things too that we have like stored in us that we
Yes.
just don't always access. It's not just
Yes.
trauma.
Yes. Yes. There's powerful things there too that they left us
Yeah.
with our ancestors. Yes.
That's so exciting. No wonder you're so hype about it. That sounds amazing.
Thank you.
So is that the next step, like to tie into your business, or is this just for your personal growth? What kind of prompted you to get into priestess school?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, well, I came across an ordained priestess on Instagram and I fucking fell
That'll
in
do it.
instant love with her. Like I just saw her post and I was like, what is this? I need to be part of it. And then like every single thing she creates, I'm just like mesmerized by it all. Like I almost go into like a
Mm.
trance-like state when I see her stuff. I'm just like so drawn and magnetized to it. And so I joined her community and started sitting in ceremony myself.
Okay. Yeah.
And um, And I just, like, there was definitely sparks there, and I just didn't know what it was going to look like because I thought,
Mhm.
shit, I'm 53, almost 54. Like, you know, Sarah, the woman I follow, the ordained priestess, because if you go on the path of ordination, it takes several years, 3 to 5 years.
Okay, yeah.
She's been on this path for 10 years. It's taken her 10 years to get where she's at. So I'm like, God, I'm 53, 10 years. But my path isn't hers, and I have to remember that. My path
Come
is gonna
on.
be different. My path is going to be for me, and it's not. It's so I'm going for it, and I all of a sudden Sarah Jenks, the woman I follow, she came out with a master class. Her and her teacher Elaine Kalila put together a master class for Sarah's community to say, here's what being a priestess looks like.
Mhm.
Here's the programs that are offered to go to school to be a priestess, to be trained in all the different ways. And so I attended that. And right afterwards, I was like, yes, I'm doing this. And
Mhm.
then I don't know if it was several days later or a week later or whatever, I was sitting in a meditation and I was just practicing empty presence, which is one of the things that you do as a priestess, one of the things that we do in ceremony with Sarah. And so that's just totally emptying yourself out. And
Mhm.
I meditate in different ways. That's not always how I meditate. So this is
Okay.
just a very specific way. I was practicing empty presence, and what came in, just shooting in, the message was, you are an oracle. And then it was, I am an oracle, I am an oracle, I am an oracle. And the feeling that I felt was just this powerful
Oh
energy,
wow.
like rising within me. It was all around me. It was like, I just sat in this energy like I had never felt before. It was
Wow.
so freaking cool. And I'm like, well, I think I know what an oracle means, but I'm gonna look up the definition just to be sure. And what does it
Smart,
say?
smart. Just to be safe.
Definition of an oracle. First words, priest or priestess. I'm like,
Okay, well, get the fuck out of here.
confirmation from the universe. Thank you very much. I'm going to priestess school.
Like, there's a slight difference between a breadcrumb and a huge neon flashing sign.
Yeah.
I love how you tell stories because you do, like, I feel like you do such a great job of just like working in the breadcrumbs of like the path you followed and just showing the examples, and it makes so much sense, like the way you tell the story. And so I just appreciate that so
Oh,
much. Like, from how you explained it, just like seeing someone on Instagram and following her and then joining a community. And it's like, I feel like the way you break things down, it makes it easier to like see how someone could take those same types of steps in their own life. And so I love it, because I think so often it's easy once you've arrived, or like once you're in, like on the other side of the metamorphosis, right?
mhm.
It can be so easy to forget the process. And so I just really appreciate that you still detail that when you tell your stories, because it's like, oh, if I want to try something new, if I kind of want to like see if I'm interested in something, I can start by following someone online. I don't have to start by going to priestess school. I don't have to start by going on a retreat. I can follow someone online. I can take a couple of yoga classes. I can go to a retreat that my friend invited me to. Like, you don't have to sell everything you own and like move to Panama for a year to like find yourself. Like, you you can take baby
Although
steps. Although 5 stars,
there's some,
highly recommend.
I'm not saying I would say no.
Right. Like, I'm not mad at that, but I feel like so often that's kind of positioned as like the only way or the best way to do it, is you just have to like start all over, cut off everybody you know, and like go to a distant land. And it's like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Or you could start by following someone on Instagram. Go from there.
I love that.
Hear me out. Hear me out.
God, I love how you like boil things down. This is so great. And thank you for telling me that you love the way that I tell stories, because I often wonder if I add too much detail when I listen to other people telling stories. I'm like, should I be doing this differently? So thank you for helping me see that the way I tell is just fine.
Yeah, I love it. So what now? Do you want to talk about your podcast, like where we could find it, or not so much since we might be moving away from that?
Sure. I'd love to. I mean, it's really funny since just in the last like month or 6 weeks, I've had the two biggest download weeks ever. Even when I had it live and going every week, I never had that many downloads. So I don't even know what's going on,
They
but
miss you.
people are finding it. And that's cool. It's called Scared as Fuck and Doing It Anyway. There's a tagline that is showing up authentically, but if you just type in Scared as Fuck and Doing It Anyway, you'll find it on all the
Amazing.
different platforms, Apple, Spotify, all the places.
Everywhere. I love it.
And I do have a mini sound bath that I posted to my podcast that sounds pretty good, but I do most of those locally. So, and those are on my website, which is ReikiFlowMN.com. Yeah.
Amazing. You're such a gem. I love you so much.
Hello,
Thank you so
sister.
much for Thank you so much for having this conversation and sharing your excitement and sharing your journey and just all the things. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on. It was so awesome. It's been a long time since I've done a podcast interview, several months. And so it was so easy. I was nervous and I
I'm
didn't need to
so-
be. And you helped me through that. I love you.
There is no reason to ever be nervous around me. That's what I'm like the most awkward person I know. So if I can't make you feel better about yourself, I don't know what we're doing. Thanks so much for joining me for this past episode of the F.I.E.R.C.E Framework podcast. I hope you love Paula as much as I do. I think she is a freaking gem. And I love like how open she was about just sharing her story so we can see like what it looks like to get inspiration and take baby steps and kind of follow those breadcrumbs to something that really lights you up and makes you excited about starting something even later in life. I love it. She doesn't let anything hold her back, and I think she's so inspiring. I definitely encourage you to follow her or reach out to her and just let her know how much you loved her on the episode or if there's anything she offers that you want to learn more about. I'll include all her links in the description so that you can have that option to reach out to her. I'll also include the link for you to sign up for my free focus course via email and those weekly newsletters so you're not missing out. Speaking of missing out, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you can get every bi-weekly episode. Lastly, March is here and I have a couple of coaching slots opened up. So if you are interested in that, you want to work with me, I would love to work with you, and I do have spots available for this month. So definitely hit me with a DM or shoot me an email and we will connect to get started. All right, until next week, keep becoming fierce.